Hey everyone, welcome to this episode. This is a topic I've wanted to talk about for a really long time, and I finally got the chance to do that with my guest, Emily Trampetti. She's a multi state licensed esthetician, skincare expert, and the visionary behind Skin Property Virtual Aesthetics. With her passion for helping people achieve healthy and vibrant skin, Emily has crafted a groundbreaking approach that goes beyond the surface, focusing on personalized care, tailored education, and lifetime empowerment. After successfully owning and operating a spa in the heart of Chicago, Emily expanded her reach virtually, guiding clients from over 20 US states and parts of Europe through her proprietary skin coaching program. Her mission is simple yet revolutionary: to empower her clients to take charge of their skin journey, to redefine beauty standards, and to make informed choices about their skincare regimen. In today's episode, we'll be delving into a topic that's caught the attention of many: Botox and other cosmetic procedures like face and lip fillers. Emily shares her insights on the psychological factors that contribute to the hype surrounding Botox and other procedures, shedding light on how society's beauty ideals influence our choices. We also dive deep into the world of Botox, what it actually is, how it works, and its historical uses that you might not know about. But the conversation doesn't stop there. Emily guides us through the long-term effects of Botox, providing valuable perspective on why it's crucial to consider all aspects before opting for such treatments. We also explore fillers, and Emily highlights their pros and cons, their short and long-term effects, ensuring you're well informed about your options. But it's not just about what to avoid, right? We also delve into a holistic approach to skincare. Emily shares her expertise on personalized skincare, tailored education, and how these factors play a pivotal role in achieving radiant, youthful skin without procedures that can come with a host of side effects. So, if you've ever been curious about the world of skincare and cosmetic procedures, the myths and misconceptions about these procedures, the psychology of beauty standards, and how to embrace your skin's natural vibrancy, you're in for a treat. I hope you enjoy this episode. And if you feel called to share this online, Emily is at Skin Property and I am at Nicole M. Jardim. So make sure to tag us if you do share. Hi, Emily. Thank you so much for being on the show with me today.
You're welcome. I'm so happy to be here.
Me too. This is going to be such a great conversation. Oh my goodness.
Woo.
When I was thinking about the questions that I wanted to ask you, of course, I had like 50 of them come into my head. And, admittedly, I don't know a ton about this stuff. Hence the reason you're here. And I've never had any Botox or filler yet. And what little I know of it kind of scares me, actually, which maybe is why I haven't done anything. But I've seen a few horror stories about Botox in particular causing things like facial paralysis and injectables getting into a blood vessel. I think I've seen, yeah, and causing skin
Yep.
necrosis. And that was pretty much enough for me to hold off. Anyways,
Like
you know,
maybe I'll think about it later.
really terrifying. But, I'm staring at my face every day, right? And I'm seeing changes and I feel like, oh, conflicted maybe. Yeah, maybe a little conflicted. And that really just brings me to the first question about, this bizarre obsession with youth in our culture. And so maybe you can start there by talking about those psychological beauty factors, I suppose you could say, that contribute
Yeah.
to the hype of Botox and all the other invasive preventative measures that people are doing, particularly young women. I'm shocked by how many really young women are doing this. So, can you talk about that, like our society's beauty standards and how they're impacting us?
Absolutely. I mean, I think you hit the nail on the head. We live in a culture of the most unrealistic beauty standards out there.
Yes.
And it doesn't help with, we've all heard social media and the dangers of it, but filters, photoshopping, it's like if one person starts it, it's hard to change or turn that ship around, right? Because no one wants to show up on Zoom, right? I mean, there's actually not to divert fully, but there's a huge kind of uptick in cosmetic surgery and fillers and injectables because we've been looking at ourselves on Zoom for the last 3 years, and it's really like we're not meant as humans to be looking at ourselves like that. And I'm sure you're not the only one that will look directly at yourself when you're in a meeting. I know I do, where I'm just like, oh, what's that? Or oh my gosh, is that what I look like? All those things. And so that doesn't help alongside all of those filters and photoshops and all the things that have been around for years but just seem to be getting worse for us. And then on top of that, I have a lot of friends. I'm close to 40, and there's like serious shaming going on out there about if you haven't gotten injectables, like what, like you haven't gotten Botox or you haven't gotten filler. There's almost like this little subculture of shaming that goes on if you haven't done it. And then plus you have Hollywood where, we've seen movies where it's very much evangelized as like a very innocuous, safe, why aren't you doing this for yourself? And I think that's a really dangerous message, but it's one that's been, I think, really normalized and even celebrated amongst our culture.
Yes. Okay. So much yes to everything you just said. Something that you said really, for me, hit the nail on the head. And it was about looking at ourselves pretty much all day, every day. So that was like the first thing. And it's so true. We're not really meant to be doing that. So it really, I think, resonates. And I think the second thing is my chiropractor, his wife works in an aesthetic studio, and she does all these things, or at least all the people that work there do all this kind of stuff, like the Botox and everything else. And he was telling me that she had mentioned that younger and younger girls are coming in. That's the first thing that I think is really alarming. But the second thing is to speak to what you were saying about all of us seeing what we see on Zoom and on social media, particularly, all the time. And so they bring photos of women that they see on social media, and she has to explain to them that they don't look like that in real life. Like, it looks yes, not real. And also they look very different in photos than they do in real life. Can you talk about that too? Because I feel like it looks good in photos, but then you see that in real life and it just doesn't look real at all. It looks so enhanced and so fake and really kind of weird. I'm not being judgmental, just so everybody knows. That's just my observation.
Well, there is, it kind of goes back to the idea of body dysmorphia, right? People with eating disorders. I myself have had eating disorders growing up, and there's this phenomenon, right, that we know scientifically now as like dysmorphia, where we see we see something that other people don't see, right? We see more lines, more wrinkles, more, sagging, whatever, right? Especially, first of all, if anyone out there has a light up magnifying mirror, throw it out, because that doesn't help anybody. And we're not, you are looking at your skin up close and personal. And yes, you're human. It has texture, it has pores, it has, uneven, different redness and discoloration factors to it. Throw it out. That doesn't help anything. Yes, you have normal skin. It's beautiful. But going back to your question, I think there's two things at play here. One, younger people are being told, from whether it being a marketing message, advertising, or even from their doctors, their dermatologists, whatever, that Botox is preventative. And that and prevention is huge right now, like, which is on the first side of the coin really wonderful, because I don't know about you, but like I grew up in the 80s and 90s, and I used tanning beds, and even the folks before me in that generation were using baby oil and aluminum foil, whatever, outside, and there was no education about sun exposure and damage and all the things that that really damages our skin and makes us age prematurely. So on the flip side, that's really wonderful that the Gen Zers are really caring about preventative skincare. But when it comes to labeling Botox, injectables, neurotoxins, fillers as preventative, and really it's more of the botulinum toxin A, because it tells us that it will stop wrinkles from forming, right? But really, in essence of skin health and functionality, it is not preventing anything. It's just simply preventing lines that might show up due to expressions. But those lines, really, the root cause of it's going to be loss of collagen, elastin, all of which normally comes with age naturally, but also can be exacerbated by sun damage and poor skincare habits, right? So number one is, it's not preventative, but doctors and, Botox is a very lucrative business, right? So how can we get younger people in and getting it so that, a lot of these businesses can make money, really well. Even like I know a couple of nurses out of school, I love them to death, but they're trying to pay off student loans. And so as a nurse, you're able to inject legally. And so a
Yeah.
lot of nurses now are opening up little pop-up shops or little clinics to do Botox or having Botox parties, to kind of help with their student loans, right? So we can't knock people for doing this because it works, but it's just being aware that this is a drug. This is a pharmaceutical. Pharmaceuticals come with health risks and all those things. And I don't feel like the message of, oh, it's preventative, it's great, it's innocuous, it's safe, all that stuff. We're not telling the other side of the story. We're just labeling it as very easy and safe and all this stuff, which of course, as a younger individual, that's the goal, right? I'm going to get in there and make sure that I look like a Kardashian or whatever the trend is. And to the other side of your question, yeah, they're going to bring in their pictures, and we see these filters, and we get all of this dysmorphia in our mind about like what we're supposed to, and I'm using air quotes, I don't know if this is on video, but like we're not supposed to look like anything. We're human beings. We're not supposed to look photoshopped. We're supposed to have pores and all of that stuff. So it's just quite alarming to me that, young kids, and even I've, been in a derm office where I have seen like 21, 22-year-olds come in and ask for Botox. And the most alarming thing, and I very much believe in dermatology and, all of the medical practitioners out there, but some will just say, okay, great, let's give you the Botox without saying, well, what are you using at home? Are you using sunscreen? Are you already in good habits? Why do you want to get Botox, right? We're not like fielding those questions that might kind of help the youth maybe become more educated on the actualities of it.
Right. Whoa, 21, 22. Yeah, I can't imagine, but I understand that that's, again, sort of a response to, like we were talking about, these beauty standards and this ideal that everybody seems to be striving for. So maybe we can reverse just a little bit and talk about what Botox actually is and how it works. I know you briefly talked about that, but for anyone who doesn't actually know what Botox is, I think it would be helpful to just hear it from you.
Yeah, Botox really, and all of it. So Botox is a brand name, right? The actual toxin is called botulinum toxin A. It is the, form of toxin that causes botulism. And the way it works is we take basically a very minute amount of it that is, at least from what current studies say, it's only been approved since 2002. So I don't think that we have a longevity of, really good data and research on it yet. But right now, it's very much stated as safe in its small amount when injected properly. But in its form, like the reason why it works and what it does is it's a muscle paralysis toxin, which is why when you think about, botulism and stuff like that disease is all about paralyzing us, very chronically. And so what this does temporarily is it paralyzes the muscle where it's injected, which is why it stops wrinkles or expression lines from forming. If I, if I inject it into, my corrugator muscle where like our 11s typically are between the eyebrows, if that muscle's paralyzed, I can't express myself, which is why we have kind of like those stone face, stereotypical images, right, of people getting Botox. Or Dysport is another brand name that uses botulinum toxin A. Xeomin is another new one that they're using. But all of it is typically, and I'm not very close to the manufacturing and the pharmaceutical side of it, so I don't know what they're coming out with now. But as it stands right now, it's still just the one toxin that we use in a minute amount to paralyze a muscle. Now, over time, like anything, if we paralyze a muscle, what happens? It atrophies over time. So sometimes we're seeing, long-term usage. Again, we don't have a lot of data yet, but some long-term usage, at least anecdotally, is showing that things can atrophy enough where you're going to have a lot of drooping over time if you continue with things, just like anything would atrophy if we didn't use it,
Right. Yeah, no, for sure. So that's what I was going to ask you next is, are there long-term effects? Even if there isn't the research, I imagine, like you said, there's a lot of anecdotal evidence of what's happening. So Maybe we start, before we get into long-term, maybe we start with some short-term things. Cause as I said in the beginning, I've seen some stuff around facial paralysis, and I was curious what other immediate side effects someone might experience using it.
Yeah, I mean, they can kind of go from, very, very dangerous to like inconvenient, right? There's a really large spectrum of side effects that can happen, as again with any pharmaceutical. I think that sometimes we forget that this is a drug. This is a toxin. We always kind of in our society talk about toxins and like topical skincare, but then that person has no problem injecting a real toxin in their body, right? So I think it's kind of ironic in that way sometimes, how we think about it. But where was I going with this? So
Side effects.
the short term, yeah, I was like, oh, the short term side effects really, I would say, on a more common basis would come along with like injection spots. Are you going to hit a blood vessel? Are you going to cause a hematoma even, right? Are you going to inject in the wrong muscle? This kind of goes to show you, if you're not working with an individual, because again, a lot of people can inject these days that might not have the right know-how or experience about how the facial muscles work, and how, you can kind of, that's where we get our botch jobs, right? That's where we get our, oh, this person's face is completely drooped on one side or whatever, because one, we can hit the wrong muscle, we can hit blood vessels, we can hit nerves, all kinds of different things and risks, especially in the facial area where we have tons of things going on. And then in addition to that, it can migrate. So if it migrates to an area we didn't want to be paralyzed or didn't want to have, droopiness or stagnation there, it can cause kind of a wonky appearance. Granted, it's temporary because our body is designed to flush out things that it doesn't recognize. So your body, as soon as you get Botox, it's going to be working to try to get it out, because that's how the body works, right? A foreign body comes in and we're like, what the hell is this? Like, get it out of my body, which is why it's temporary. It's a good thing. It's temporary. And yeah, so like a lot of times, if you don't work with a practitioner that knows what they're doing, even if they do know what they're doing, it has risks. You're injecting something. It's not like you can see exactly where you're going. You're still on the skin surface. So anybody that gets an injectable, even if they've gotten it forever, right, has the same amount of risk going into the next session as they would their first session, with all these different things, everything from, again, a hematoma to migrated toxin to muscles you didn't intend, nerves, blood vessels. You could have really severe allergic reactions as well if you're not, if your body just really, really rejects it. And then, obviously that can be almost like a death cause or anaphylactic shock. There's a plethora of short-term, as you're saying, side effects upon getting it. Plus the inconvenience of, when you get Botox, you really can't do much for a little bit because you don't want to have it move. You don't want to have it, flush it to the lymph system right away. So you have to let it set, which means like no working out. You can't lie down for a while. Like there's a whole, strict instruction guide on what you can and cannot do. I think it's like 12 or 24 hours before and after Botox. Like when I used to, I do all virtual coaching now, but when I had my spa, that's one of the first questions I ask. Have you gotten fillers or Botox recently? Because I couldn't work on you if you did in the last like 24 hours, because I would move it. Or, I like that. And then there's, what, $2,000 wasted or whatever you spent on it. So,
Wow.
there's lots of short-term risks involved.
Yeah, no, that's a lot to consider. And so in terms of long-term responses or risks, did you want to add to anything that you shared?
Well, again, I mean, I think sometimes we are, and this is my opinion, okay? So
You can have your opinion. It's all
I
good.
have read a lot of research and read the papers that are out there. There are a lot of people out there that are like, it's totally safe and all that stuff, right? But we thought that breast implants were totally safe for a long time too, right? And now we're having, surgeries to take them out because of all this chronic, conditions that are happening because of it. So Botox, again, this has only been FDA approved for cosmetic usage since 2002. And I know that, at least for me, it still seems like it was like last year, but, this is not that long ago. right? And we don't have long-term data that really shows us what the risks are associated. Anecdotally, I know I've spoken to that in a little bit ago, where things will atrophy if you are a religious, you know, uh, Botox or Dysport user. After 10 or 20 years, you might have severe drooping in your eyelids, your face, because you are atrophying that muscle. And especially if you don't do anything else as far as like skincare traditionally, sun protection, being in the right products, being in the right treatments, all that stuff, you're not doing yourself any favors whatsoever. In fact, psychologically, as we kind of round that base again, you're just going to create more dysmorphia, because what happens when you get rid of it, or what happens when it comes back? What happens when the Botox dissipates? You're going to be like, oh my gosh, is that what my wrinkle looked like? Because you're used to now seeing it not. And as much as we see things like change, just like filters and stuff like that, it just makes the reality seem worse.
Right.
So it's all about, and this message about like, I'm doing it for myself. Like, okay, I want to challenge that and say, what is it that you're doing for yourself about this, right? You're undergoing risk, pain, inconvenience, extreme expensiveness, right? For you, because this is something that is going to really be healthy and wonderful. And no, I would challenge to say that it's because of our unrealistic beauty standards in this world. And we're looking for things that make us feel more valued, more worthy, and basically more liked, right?
Yeah.
And so really, is that doing it for you? I would like to challenge that.
Yeah, no, it's a really great point. And um it brings up what you said earlier about the fact that there's a little bit of shaming if you haven't done any of this. I've certainly encountered that, and I've seen that with others. I've had conversations with people who also feel this weird peer pressure to do these procedures or to have fillers or whatever Botox done. So it is really interesting that you brought that up. And speaking of fillers, I mentioned before we started recording that I wanted to just chat about those a little bit, because obviously those are so popular now. I would even venture to say that they seem to be more popular than Botox and the other products that use botulinum. So I'm just curious about that. Could you talk about the fillers a little bit?
Yeah, so fillers, think about things like Juvederm out there. Most of them are all hyaluronic acid based. So hyaluronic acid is it's technically called a glycosaminoglycan. It's something that's actually existing in our skin as a humectant, and it keeps everything really hydrated and moist. And then we can topically put it into our skin, and our body kind of accepts it because of that nature. And so again, I'm not a practitioner of fillers, but again, I've seen this, I've experienced the culture of it, and it's kind of the same thing where we get obsessed with, okay, we really like a result, right? It'll plump out lines, it'll plump out wrinkles, it'll plump out or contour our face the way we want it to be contoured, right? Especially if we are already coming and showing up with a lot of insecurities. I don't know about you, but I have a lot of insecurities, and again, based off of the ideals that we have to align or exceed in this world. But once we experience those immediate results of a filler, it's hard not to become kind of addicted to it, because once it fades, again, you're like, oh man, like I looked so good, or whatever emotion that you're going to have, or I got so many compliments, or all of those types of things. And so what do? We continue doing it. And then over time, just like the Botox, that's why I think those two are just so similar, is because you're looking for immediate effects of trying to conform your appearance basically into whatever standard that you're looking to conform it to. And that's why many people that do Botox also do fillers, right? It's kind of like a buy one, get one kind of a package deal with those things, because you can really create your ideal look with them. But again, the danger would come with, okay, well, what's the long-term effects of that?
Right. Yeah. And so with the fillers, that was the one thing. And again, I feel like we should also talk too about the fact that these are, I assume, relatively rare side effects, what you've all been what all you've been sharing. Maybe you can speak to that a little bit too, because I certainly don't want to completely freak people out with this episode, but
Right.
I do think it's
Yeah.
important to talk about the actual incidence of these side effects.
Yeah. So, I mean, the fact that people continue to get these treatments, I think should tell you enough that there's probably more success stories than, you know, scary stories out there or horror stories. I mean, there's probably like, I think the recent number was like 7 million injections per year in the States or something.
Yeah.
Very many of them, right? And so, and as anything in the science world and kind of the modern culture, I think we get better with things and figure things out. But, you know, I would say that the number one thing that I hear about and see is injector error, which is
Mm.
not so much about the amount of toxin, but if you're injecting it in the wrong place or
Right.
you hit a blood vessel, right? Like all of those things can cause issues. Improper migration, right? I think the most common thing that could happen is the so-called botch job, which is migration. If you're, if you inject in the wrong place, if you inject the wrong muscle, all those types of things. You can also, there's something called filler fatigue, which can happen where, basically your body kind of just doesn't accept these injections the same way that they used to when you first started getting them, which
Mm.
can cause, I think, excuse me if this is going to be controversial, but like how the chipmunk cheeks and, all of the looks that we kind of are familiar with, that can happen over time the more we get these things. So, kind of going back to your question, yeah, they kind of go hand in hand. And from like a side effect perspective, but I would say, more commonly would be the botch jobs. And if you have someone that is not familiar with the structure of the face, the facial muscles, like if you're going to your dentist for cosmetic Botox, like I would probably not recommend that. A lot of dentists are offering it now. And I think there's really promising data out there for more therapeutic uses of Botox. Like, for example, TMJ problems. A lot of us are really stressed. We grind our teeth at night. I for certain am one of those people. And if you have severe TMJ, Botox has been really used to help a lot of people kind of, again, paralyze that muscle to help them relax their jaw.
Right.
In addition to that, we're able to stop hyperhidrosis with like excessive sweating in the armpits that can stop kind of that gland from producing sweat. And there's other kind of therapeutic experiments out there now with other things that this drug could help with. But from a cosmetic perspective, I would say you're probably okay, but it's kind of like playing the lottery, right? All it takes is one bad injectable from even a practice practitioner and something can go wrong, right? It's your body. Our bodies are really complex.
Yes, I completely agree with that. I know. And I think that that's something I preach about so often. It's the nuanced approach that we must take with bodies because we are all very different and very complex, and we're all dealing with different life experiences and health histories. So, yes, that's all so helpful. And I wanted to talk a little bit about alternatives to Botox, like specific skincare practices or ingredients that are particularly beneficial in this regard. I don't know if you have any thoughts on that. If
Yeah.
I imagine there's lots of things we can be doing instead. I obviously like just diet alone and sunscreen, you said, were two of the things, but yeah, I know.
Yeah.
I feel like we also want the quick fixes as well, which, it's part of our society, I suppose.
It's true. It's true. I agree with all of what you just said about like, all the nuances with our complex bodies, all that stuff. And the same kind of goes for, how to take care of our skin topically, like we're kind of getting into, which is, and that's why, I created my coaching where it's, we have so much generalized stuff out there and our bodies and our skin is different. Actually, recently there was like some data published about how we don't have a lot of information on like the microbiome of the skin. We're still really in the nascency of like figuring that out. But one thing that we can say is that every single person's like skin microbiome is vastly different, like
So
vastly
cool.
unique.
Wow.
So, which I believe it's kind of the same thing for our gut, too.
Yes,
So,
very
so
much
with that
so.
said, like you really need to individualize skincare to you, right? Which is why you shouldn't listen to your neighbor or your sister or whatever about what they're using and what works for them. But kind of going back to like what we can do besides Botox for that, that's the first thing. Get in a skincare routine consistently that is sustainable to you, that is personalized to your skin and your needs and your goals. So for example, let's talk about the Botox stuff. If you have lines and wrinkles that you want to dissipate, or smooth out, plump out, all of the words. First of all, let's lay the groundwork and say, let's align our expectations to a realistic one. Aging happens. There's nothing on this planet that can stop us from aging. Except again, if you get, well, it's not going to stop from aging, but if you get like a facelift, yeah, it's going to take away your wrinkles. But, besides surgery or, risk associated injectables and things like that, you're going to age. But the great thing is science, innovation in skincare topical has improved so much over the years and continues to, where we have access to better delivery systems because the skin is really hard to penetrate. I mean, even drug companies are challenged daily to figure out how to better penetrate the skin. There's all these kind of lies out there that are like, our skin absorbs like a sponge. Yeah, right. Like the whole skincare industry and medical industry from a topical perspective, like topical drugs, is like trying to figure out the best way to infiltrate the skin. Because if we can do that, we can deliver, whether it be a pharmaceutical aspect of things or topically, like vitamins, minerals, and all the things we need to kind of grow collagen, boost it up. Like that's the hard part. We can't get it in the skin because our skin is so designed to keep things out. We have a waterproof layer. It kind of goes like oil, water-based. Like it has all these kind of gatekeepers, right? That keep things from getting inside, which is wonderful for our health. But from like a skincare perspective, you're like, oh, get in my skin. So the great thing about, some of these new delivery systems are that, they can create ways of penetrating a little bit deeper and getting the ingredients like peptides. Peptides are wonderful. Some of them actually will help to relax muscles in the face. Some of them will help to say, hey, collagen, wake up, grow, and strengthen yourself. Some of them will add moisture and hydration and hyaluronic acid, which actually helps not only the collagen and elastin, but helps our skin function for us longer and more efficiently, because as we age, it slows down. So it's all about continuing to stimulate the skin functionality so it continues to work hard for us. And that's kind of like more of the root cause approach to skincare. So yes, there are many things we can do, and a lot of them, unfortunately, aren't sexy. Right?
Oh,
So,
don't I know it? Yep.
right?
I
So
work
like
in health and wellness.
sunscreen.
I get it.
Yeah. Oh yeah, you
Yes.
totally get it, right? You're like,
Right.
oh, okay. It comes down to, regular sunscreen usage, and people are always like, oh God, no one likes to apply sunscreen. Let's get it out of the way. It's not the most glamorous thing to apply, but it's going to not only potentially save your life with, skin cancers, which are totally on the rise, but also it's going to prevent that collagen degradation and elastin degradation that we all hate, because why? It causes wrinkles and fine lines. So the more we can stay out of the sun, it's not going to, mess with your vitamin D. It's not going to do that stuff. But sunscreen, at least SPF 30, reapply every couple hours. If you're indoors, if you're sitting where a plant could grow, you should have your sunscreen on, rain or shine, right? It's not seasonal. So that's my little plug on sunscreen. But then in addition to that, everyone can use more hydration. Everyone could use like a hyaluronic acid serum, everyone, acne, aging, all that stuff. That's just going to help your skin not only stay hydrated and plump out, which goes back to the kind of efficiency of the skin functionality, but also it helps with collagen and elastin. And then finally, antioxidant products, which luckily a lot of serums and creams nowadays have antioxidants infused in them. Antioxidants, if you're not familiar, are basically little free radical scavengers that kind of equalize unbalanced molecules in the body that can be kind of a precursor to disease and dysfunction in the body. It ages us. So things like topical stabilized vitamin C, retinoids, vitamin E, there's actually tons of like great minerals, copper, zinc, all of these things are antioxidants. And so a lot of skincare, it's kind of dumbed down where because they're so great, a lot of companies just throw them in anyway. So you really can't go wrong with that. But where it comes down, like the nuances of quality of products, that's more about, picking products that are not only suited for your skin type, conditions, goals, but also looking for products that have quality delivery systems that actually work and get into the skin.
Right. And so with you talk about personalized skincare and, and more tailored education, do you feel like that's crucial? Do you feel like someone can just go out and buy some products like what you just described and they'll be fine? Or do you feel like there really does need to be more of a personalized approach? I mean, it would be similar, I suppose, to working with a health coach or a dietitian or, someone who is a nutritionist or whatever, or a personal trainer, even, I imagine, to get really tailored dietary protocols or exercise protocols for your specific situation.
Yeah, it's absolutely the same thing. Skin and the skincare kind of industry or world is very similar to, we'll call it the exercise training world, right? Our skin is an organ. It kind of works like the body where you have to kind of build up its strength. And so it can be more resilient over time. And the more resilient it is, the better it will age for us and all of the good stuff that we want. And so when it comes to personalizing something for you, this is why professionals like myself exist. This is why this profession exists, is because it is pretty impossible for anyone without a background in ingredient technology and chemistry and skin physiology and histology to go on Google, where there's tons of misinformation and, like you could just drive yourself mad looking up skincare advice on the internet. Like, let's be honest, right?
Yep. Like nutrition advice, 100%.
Same thing,
Yeah,
same thing. Fitness,
totally.
nutrition, like the whole wellness industry. It's like, don't even bother. Like, plug into someone that you trust and call it a day, because it's just a jungle out there. So going back to your question, yeah, you might be able to go to the drugstore and listen to kind of the marketing sales pitch of some of these companies and figure out what you need for yourself. You could spend a couple hours on Google and maybe find the right stuff. But more likely than not, you're not going to, and you're most likely going to be probably dissatisfied and spending actually a lot more money than if you would just invest in, plugging in with a really good esthetician to help you know what your skin is like from someone that knows how to read and evaluate skin and tell you, what you should be using. A lot of my clients like, yeah, like it's the easiest thing ever, but because our industry is infiltrated with so many sexy, fun new products, and we have kind of going back to what we talked about very early on, we have a shiny new object, way of thinking, like, oh, what's that? I want to try this and that, all these things. It's not sexy. But at the same time, if we want better skin, we want to manage our skin better, we have to go back to the basics, right? We really should be plugging in with a professional that will be our long-term partner, just like you would a doctor, just like you would a wellness coach, just like you would a fitness coach. Like all of those things, is people exist for a reason, but we want to do it alone. We have this like need to want to do it by ourselves, because whether or not we don't trust people or what it is, well, then find someone you trust, because there are good people out there. This is a second career for me. I don't make a lot of money, but I love what I do. And, and I like making a difference. But yeah, and there are people that are going to take advantage of you and all that stuff, but there are people that really, really want to help you. And so that would be kind of my plug, is find an esthetician that you trust, plug in with them. You won't regret it. I promise you that. And so, yes, that's the best way to do it. Second best way would be to at least be evaluated by an esthetician and then go and pick out your products after hearing what they recommend. And then the third and worst situation would be just to, blindly follow the marketing claims or influencers.
Oh my gosh, the influencers. I could go on about that.
Yeah,
It's funny you brought something up about just like the bright, shiny object syndrome. And because I've obviously been in these places and seen, because I've done, laser hair removal and various other things. And you see the menu of options. And I know you'd mentioned Dysport, and I know there's Juvederm and various other things, but there's so many now. And I remember just recently looking at one, looking at it online at this place, and they had like this whole menu of, it had to have been like at least 15 different types of fillers and various other things. And the way they describe it is so enticing. You're just like, oh, a more chiseled jaw, or, like more profound or prominent cheekbones or whatever, and it's just like, sign me up.
Yeah.
And,
You can tell like they have a good marketing department because they
oh
can
my
use
gosh,
the keywords.
the
They're just like,
language.
yeah.
It's so brilliant. I know, I
Here's my
agree. It is.
money.
It's so enticing. And so, that's I guess that would be my next question. Like, what advice would you give to somebody who is considering Botox or fillers or any of this stuff, but is actually interested as well, maybe in exploring more natural and non-invasive skincare options? Do you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, absolutely. And first and foremost, like I have a lot of clients that choose to get injectables, and I'm
Yeah.
never one to shame anybody, right? I think my big beef is always like, if you're going to be advertising Botox as this, solution to solve all their worldly problems, you need to give them the other side of the coin. What are the risks, right? What are they truly signing up for? And then give people the right to use their critical mind to decide what they want to do for them, right? But this is the world we live in. You're very familiar with it too in your industry, where it's, marketing is king. We live in a capitalistic society, right? That's just going to be how it is, right? So we have to, and especially nowadays with social media and all the information, like we just have to turn on our critical thinking a little bit more. We can't just blindly, follow this stuff. We have to almost be looking at things with a marketing background, saying, okay, is this truly too good to be true? Does it seem too good to be true? Am I overly excited to like get this because it's going to solve all of my problems, right? Like I kind of associate it back to whenever, like especially during COVID, I was like, oh, I just need a change. So I'm like, I dyed my hair like a crazy red color or something, right? And I ended up hating it. But we just have this like, let's just change it. It'll just solve all my problems, right? And at the end of the day, like, is it really going to solve all your problems? No. So but going back to your original question is, yeah, try it out. If you're curious, you got the extra money, and do it, try it out. But I would just say my biggest advice is to really be honest with yourself. Ask yourself, why am I doing this? Do I really have the money for it? Because it's temporary. It lasts 3 months. And are you going to keep up with it? Right. And am I familiar and aware of all the risks, and I'm okay with them if one of those things happens, right?
Yeah.
And if you're like, yeah, cowboy up, let's go for it. Like try it out, right? I personally won't do it because I think I just really want to stand up to like the beauty standards of this world, but I have no shame in people that want to do it because we all have things. I call them kind of coping mechanisms, right? We all have things that we want to do that are going to help us feel better, even if it's for the wrong reasons. We all do it. We're human, right? But I think just getting the education out there and saying, okay, that's great, you're doing this, but why don't you also consider wearing sunscreen? Why don't you also consider getting an antioxidant topical serum or cream and making sure that you can plug in with an esthetician that gets to know your skin, helps you with the actual root cause of a lot of this stuff to prevent it and correct it long term.
That was so well said. Thank you. I feel like that was super helpful for anyone who is trying to make an informed decision about these things. And I appreciate you saying that it's not like this or this. It could be both potentially. And just again, for anyone who is curious about this and just wants to feel empowered about the decision that they're making so that they see both sides. So thank you for that. Are there any final words that you'd like to share about how we can take control of our skin or reach our goals or anything like that?
I always talk to my clients because, I'm in the industry. I like to call myself like esthetician slash therapist because, skin, like wellness, like body, like fitness are industries that are full of vulnerability and are full of insecurity as well. And practitioners in this space have to, go through a lot of emotional roller coasters with their clients. Especially for me, I deal with a lot of acne, a lot of adult acne, a lot of, pigmentation disorders, all kinds of skin conditions that just deplete my clients emotionally, right? And I'm alongside them for that journey. And sometimes it is like, sometimes I don't sleep at night because I'm like, oh my gosh, like I'm just worrying about them because I know it's such a struggle and such a journey. And so, you know, this all kind of still goes back to these unrealistic standards we have and all these dysmorphias we have, not only from our body, but our skin. And so a lot of the work I do with my clients is, yes, getting them in the right products, but we do a lot of work around reestablishing like what the bar of, you know, reality is for where we should be and what our goals should be. And one of the tools I use sometimes, whether they're moms or not, is I say, picture yourself as like a 6-year-old or picture your daughter, a young daughter, right? And what would you want her to believe in herself if she had your conditions, right? Or like, would you want her seeing you tear yourself down, because you have acne and you're getting Botox, you're getting all these things. Like, what are we doing to set our next generation up for what we don't want to see? And so sometimes that can get you out of your head about, things that you're insecure about or things that you don't want to see or show up for. And I find that can be a really helpful tool and kind of figuring out the whys behind we do things and what we really want to see in this world.
So good. So helpful. Thank you so much, Emily. This was really enlightening. I feel like I learned so much. I would love for you to share where everyone can find you and your work and all of your resources.
Yeah, absolutely. So Skin Property, www.skinproperty.co. That's my website. I'm currently a virtual esthetician. So I work with clients in all capacities virtually. So I work with clients, I think, in like 20 states now. And it's really wonderful because I can kind of have no boundaries for helping people achieve their best skin. And I'm coming out with a new book too, which will kind of help people that want to do it themselves without kind of help. So keep an eye on that. But otherwise, my Instagram handle is Skin Property as well. So happy to field any questions if anyone has them, if they want to go ahead and send them to me through a DM.
Amazing. Thank you so much again. This was really great. I really
Thank
appreciate
you.
all your knowledge.
Same. Thank you so much. I really appreciate it.
That's a wrap. Be sure to click that subscribe button to join me for more Girl Talk Gone Menstrual in upcoming episodes. But in the meantime, check out my latest Period Party episode. And if you're looking for a deeper dive into your hormones, go ahead and take my period quiz at nicolejardim.com/quiz.